of Facing the Nation. Actually, it's the first edition of Facing the Nation for the year 2019. I know some of you may think it's a bit cliche to be wishing people a happy new year on to this point in the month when we're past the halfway mark, but I'm going to do it anyway. So happy new year to you, and I wish you all the wonderful things that you wish yourself in this coming year. Lots to get to, not only on this program but on so many other programs to come. It is my pleasure for the first program to be discussing some current issues with some very important, brilliant, and intelligent young minds on this program. I'm very happy to return to Facing the Nation this year with this sort of panel, and I must admit that they're not only brilliant but they're also funny. As I speak to you, I'm really trying to restrain from laughing, but of course they're also very serious, brilliant minds, so we definitely won't be laughing too much on today's program. It is my pleasure to, and none of them are strangers to this program, I might add. It is my pleasure to welcome back to the program 3 of my political colleagues and friends, and I start with the other female on the panel, Ms. Thandi McAllister. She is an executive member of the People's National Congress Reform. Thandi, welcome back to Facing the Nation, ma'am.
Thank you, Malika. It's a pleasure to be back.
Good, it's a pleasure having you. Viewers, I did say executive member, but she holds so many other hats, too many to talk about now. Not only hats, but in terms of experience, and I'm talking about her experience because I'm also trying to put today's conversation in context at the same time so you'll understand where we're coming from. It's not just, a group of people who are just talking, but they know what they will be talking about. Also, welcome back to the program, the sitting chairman of the Guyana Youth and Student Movement. Again, no stranger to Facing the Nation. Welcome to Mr. Ryan Belgrave. He is also an executive member of the People's National Congress Reform. Welcome back, sir.
Thank you, Malika.
All right. And
it's a pleasure being here.
Oh,
yes.
Great. I can see that on your face, the look on your face. And also the former chairman of the Guyana Youth and Student Movement. These days, most of you know him as the director of sport because that is what he is. He is also an executive member on the PNCR's executive committee. Christopher Jones, welcome to Facing the Nation.
Thank you, Malika.
All right, folks. As I did say, it really is a pleasure for me to begin this year's program by chatting with the three of you because I know you have a whole lot of opinions and not just opinions that are loose, but opinions that really matter, especially in this current environment, the current atmosphere whereby we're dealing with a lot of political and governance issues. So that you understand what we're really discussing and where we're coming from, I just have a few points that I'm going to touch on just to put the conversation into context. First of all, the governance and the political environment, for some, is currently under some amount of strain. So, again, these few points just to put our conversation in context. The government, and this is to remind every single one, those who support this government and those who don't support. Unfortunately, you don't support. The government of the day, that is the APNU-AFC administration, has the full mandate to govern and perform. And any government that has been elected legally and duly elected by the people, that government has the full mandate to govern and perform. The government was legally elected for a 5-year term. The electorate did not vote just for one person to come, maybe receive a bag of money here, there, or somebody to give a bag of money here, there, and then to just decide. Because of that, the government cannot govern. Remember, the electorate also ensure that democracy is in place by voting. That is what democracy is all about in a country. The government is also a lawful one that is acting within the Constitution and the rule of law. And I specifically ensure that I have these points on paper so that people will understand where we're coming from and to put it in its simplest terms. We're not here to use the big language and the big jargons to confuse you, but we want to ensure that you understand exactly what is happening. Any person who acts outside of that or breaks the law can be sanctioned legally. The Constitution in no way, and this, I must stress this, our Constitution in no way speaks to or speaks of a caretaker government. There is no such thing. The government of the day was elected and it's still the government of the day. Therefore, the fear-mongering and intimidating of citizens, more so public servants, as we would have seen and heard a few hours ago, is actually an offense. That is an offense to try to intimidate or use threatening language and, wild language. It intimidates them, and really and truly it confuses people and makes it difficult for them to perform on the job. Remember that public servants are the engine of growth for any government of the day, and therefore should not be swayed or fooled by any political sentence or statements. They cannot and must not allow to use wild and reckless sentiments to in any way prevent them from functioning effectively and efficiently. And ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to get those few things out of the way to put our conversation in context, and I know we'll be talking about a lot of developmental matters in terms of our current government also. Thandi, I'd like to begin with you. Your sentiments on everything that is happening and why it is important at this juncture for us to be in the know, so to speak, for the average citizen out there to understand everything that is going on and to pay attention to what is happening.
Thank you, Malika. And I want to sort of agree with what you would have said. The government remains the government up until such time there are duly constituted elections and a new government is sworn in. So I'm happy that we got that point out. It is important that citizens stay abreast with current affairs because really it is what informs our daily lives. And we say in law, we say ignorance of the law is no excuse. And I can tell you, ignorance of developmental works, ignorance of anything that is happening in your country is no excuse. I think we have, as individuals, a responsibility to ourselves first to keep abreast with what's happening, any changes. And it's also important for those of us who are either decision makers or we are closely aligned to the decision makers and we know of the decisions that are made. It is equally important for us to ensure that the right information is always disseminated. Because, since December 21st, we have been hearing so many things. And it is easy for persons who don't know to become confused. It is so easy. And it is difficult if those of us who know the truth, we are reactive. It is difficult because first you have to dispel the myths and then replace the myths with the facts. And so it is important that all of us here and our colleagues, that we view quite seriously our public relations strategy and how effective that is in reaching the people of Guyana.
I think programs such as these, though, not the programs specifically, but the conversations and the content and the makeup, I think these things would help. And on that note, Ryan, I'd like to bring you into the conversation, and I'd like to go a bit more direct than I went to it, Thandi. There is talk, because of everything that is happening, we know the matter is in court. There is now talk about regional and general elections, whenever it's going to be. We know before all of this, elections were constitutionally due. I think it's by August 2020. So regardless of when we're preparing for it, we are preparing for regional and general elections. Ryan, all of us here support one political party, one political grouping. That is not a secret. Why do you believe at this time it is important for us to recognize the efforts of the current administration and try to keep that going and encourage people to come on board to ensure that we keep that going?
All right, thank you, Malika, and once again, good afternoon to your viewers. I know that you said your program is viewed by both supporters of this present government and even those persons that it is their job or their responsibility to monitor programs like these. I hope that by the end of this conversation, we would cause persons, that if they have not given their support overwhelmingly to the AP and UAFC administration, to at least reconsider their position and to at least go out there and try to gain some more information. Thandi spoke to the fact that there's a lot of misinformation that is being peddled. And this, of course, it's no secret, it's being peddled by the People's Progressive Party Civic, who try, or it's their duty basically to inform or misinform the citizens as to what is happening. But to answer your question directly, why do we think, or why do I think that at this juncture the citizens should throw their support behind this administration? Yes, there is no secret that we have not communicated enough with our people. We have not spoken to them enough about some of the progress and change that has happened. And yes, we have not come to that level, or we have not been able to create a utopia here in Guyana. But the program or the work has begun. There is development happening all across the country. If we were to speak to any sector, it might take us several programs in order to complete that discourse or to share that information. But if we could zero in on young people, because a lot of times we hear that, nothing has been done for the youth. I can speak to several things. Let's start with professionalizing young people. Let's look at the Bertram Collins Staff College. That is basically training young persons, because a criticism of youth is always them young people in the public sector, they don't know how to talk to people, they don't know how to do work, they're just coming there. So this government has taken a conscious effort to train and professionalize youth. Not only, and this of course is persons getting into the public sector. So you come, you have your basic qualifications, your CXC or whatever else that you would have done, and you get into the Bertram Collins Staff College, where you undergo a rigorous training program, so that when you get into the public sector, it would help with the professionalism, or basically benefit the sector more. This is one area. We are more closer now under this administration to the realization of a law school here in Guyana. And Thandi can speak to this, the struggles of seeing annually the numbers that turn out from the University of Guyana. Brilliant young people, only to be told that, you have to satisfy certain criteria to try to get into only 25 can go to the Wooding Law School. If you train 100 there, only 25 can go. What happens with them? With us having a law program or a more structured law program here in Guyana, we will see more of our persons locally trained to meet the needs of the Guyanese reality. So we are more closer to having a structured or a law school here in Guyana. We see
before you continue, I'm happy that you talk about the law school, because, and again, we're going to pull the director of sport into this in a minute. But Thandi, the reason I want you to jump in here as somebody who would have experienced the difficulties in having to leave Guyana and go elsewhere, talk about the sort of relief, given that Ryan has brought it up, the sort of relief that you expect those now coming to study law would be able to feel, would be able to benefit and gain with a law school here.
It's be cost effective.
Okay.
Malika, it is expensive. It is approximately 10 million Guyana dollars over the 2-year period. If we are to have our students leave here to go to Trinidad to study, there is rent, there's transportation, and every year rent increases.
Yeah.
There is transportation, clothing, textbooks, and food. And these are costs outside of the tuition, which is also on the increase.
Yes.
So for the Guyanese student, having a law school in Guyana, it will be very, very cost effective.
All right, great. Chris Jones, let me just ask you to jump in here again before the chairman of the youth arm continues. Now, one of the things we heard out of the opposition leaders press conference yesterday, and it's splashed in the newspapers today, and the reason I'm asking you about this too is because I know you've done a lot of youth work. You've been a face out there. They're basically, obviously, accusing this government of not doing enough. Some of our own people have done that over the years, and constructive criticisms are fine. But the sentiments now is that the leaders in the APNU, AFC government are panicking because they are not certain how to go about pulling back the youth that they have, in a sense, disappointed or let down from May 2015 to now. What are your sentiments on that?
All right, let me quickly say off the bat that former President, now opposition leader Barrett Jagdeo, is about the last person who has any moral right to speak about youth development at all. He should be the last person to speak on that. As it relates to youth development under the AP and UAFC, I would want to posit that the amount of support to young people in various fields, Ryan spoke about the public service sector, money's being made available to young people to access to become young entrepreneurs. His Excellency the President is adamant that every young person mustn't look to government for employment and they must seek to become entrepreneurs. There are several programs within several ministries and agencies that funding are available. I agree with my colleagues that if you would want to cast blame on a government for poor performance, it would be in public relations, and that is this government. In terms of its public relations, it's very poor. And that is why we can speak to those agencies and ministries that have funding there. For example, the Ministry of Social Protection. In 2019 alone, there is an allocation of $250 million that young people can access to become entrepreneurs. There is the Small Business Bureau, there is Go Invest, there is iPad, just to name a few. So those opportunities are there. Sorry?
No, I talking about youth and business, and I think you must mention the YPOG program,
YPOG
program,
under the
exactly.
Ministry of Presidency Social Cohesion Department.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So essentially, there have been a weakness in terms of getting the information out there for young people to access those. But the former president and current opposition leader, as I mentioned, is but the last person who has any moral right to speak about youth development.
So as it is, and again, all of us, at some point in time within the PNCR and within the APNU, Partnership for National Unity, at some point we've all been faces, in whatever area, whatever sector or community we've been advocating and trying to get young people on board. So you're saying at this time that people out there, especially our elders, should not be worried that we may not be able to pull the young people. So you're saying that we should not. It should not be.
You see, they got the saying, "This time in a long time." Like before, when with PPP were accustomed to the bottom house meeting, in which they spread racial talk to divide the nation, because essentially that is how they know to galvanize a base. Young people are much more educated now. They have access to information, readily information. So you can't bamboozle them, for want of a better word, of them now. They are informed and they know how to access those information and so forth. So it would. So in terms of young people being of fee, in terms of what was had under the previous government and what is currently obtained, I can speak to, without fear of contradiction, my period under the People's Progressive Party Civic as a young man, as a young Afro-Guyanese, if you want to go that way, that at one stage you felt you are an alien, that you have no right here in Guyana, that if you sought at that time under Jagdio's administration, that you sought recourse at the police, rather than they take a report from you, they lock you up. I have I have friends who would have went through that. You had period of time when you had the RoboCop, the Fraser, and the Steve Marai, people who would see young men just on the corner or in the field playing football or whatever the case be, and they will pistol whip them. They will detain them for beyond 72 hours without any charges being imposed upon them. We could speak about Johansen Douglas and Ronson Gray, coming from the University of Guyana, just playing basketball. One killed on Sherry Street. Ronson luckily survived. And at that time, under Barrett Jagdio's administration, when the University of Guyana, we had a massive protest demonstration on Sherry Street. And we were essentially calling upon His Excellency, then Barrett Jagdio, to come to speak to us, the young people, to assure us that the atrocities meted out to Johansen Douglas would not be repeated under his administration. Instead of that, the then President Barrett Jagdio drove and went all the way to New Amsterdam, because around the same period, there was a huge fire in the commercial sector in New Amsterdam, and that's where he went. never came to address the
Well,
situation.
Chris, I'm happy that you raised that because I want to develop on that and I would want both Thandi and Ryan's sentiments on it. However, viewers, if you're now tuning in, of course, our conversation today is based on what's happening currently. We're trying to put everything in context and to remind you why it is important to keep supporting the current administration. Chris, to play in a sense, I know some people don't like when I say this, to play devil's advocate in a sense. There are some people out there who always, I myself say, there is what we call the Jagdeo generation, from one age to the next. The argument and the difficulty would be, again, which is a fact, I think it's about 65% of our voting population are youth. A large of them were born in the Jagdeo period, the Jagdeo era. They're now going to be able to vote. They don't necessarily know or understand what you just said, what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And as I said, I'm going to want sentiments from all of you on this. What is the difficulty? How difficult it is? How can we reach out to them and let them know? It's not just, we're not being vindictive by telling you this. This is exactly what happened.
Yeah.
This is why you should not support the PPP. What is the difficulty in us reaching out to that demographic and getting them to understand, look, this is what we run the risk of putting back in there if we're not focused and not, head on.
Sorry, just before Chris goes.
Go ahead,
yes.
Ryan.
I think just as it is important to remind persons or for those persons that would not have known, to teach them or let them know what has happened under the Jagdeo's administration, under the PPPC, it is also important for us to share our information, our message of the developmental or transformational projects that have come under this administration. We've started on some, and as I indicated to you before, this is something that this program will not permit us to do. And we're all in agreement, and our viewers are in agreement as well, that once we have a more effective or aggressive PR strategy, then it will serve us well to let the citizens know that these are the things that this government has done. I saw this pageantry and words in the National Assembly during the debates and the no confidence motion, where they raised the draft of the APNUFC's manifesto. Of course, they didn't show the final thing, and they spoke to all of the ambitious programs and so that this administration had. Yes, as people rightly said, Chris uses this analogy a lot. When you're outside of a house, you could talk about everything that you'd want to do. You get $5,000 or $20,000 for Christmas or staying here, and these are the things that I'm going to do. But when you get in and then you realize that the roof leaking at every single place and all of that, then you will have to reprioritize the things that you're doing. So when we got into to this government, we had to pay these settlements and all of the court cases that came against the People's Progressive Party Civic. When you had to pay to bail out the sugar industry and pay to bail out the rice and the petroleum and all of those things. Billions of dollars that essentially was the responsibility of the previous administration to settle these matters or to not have the government have to suffer or to face that liability. And then, of course, as I said, reprioritizing. There's so much that has been done, but our message to get it out there.
Yes.
You see, Chris touched on a few. I don't know why he's being modest. Because when he made his maiden presentation in the National Assembly as a Member of Parliament, he spoke about the Community Ground Enhancement Project. The PPPC would have had close to $300 million annually, and they claimed in the National Assembly every year that they were developing community grounds and so. Where are they? You look across the length and breadth of Guyana, save and except for those grounds that have been done under this administration, under the current Director of Sport and the Department of Youth, Culture and Sport. Can we see the results of these $300 million that was spent, well, 300, let's say times
Every
5.
year, exactly.
Over in excess of $1 billion that was spent under the People's Progressive Party Civic to develop community grounds or safe places for young people to congregate. So there's so much that has been done, and it is Thandi. I got to keep point. It is upsetting to sit and listen to Jagdeo and the PPPC type talk about what this government, and it is even more upsetting for them to talk about young people. Again, Chris in his modesty spoke about the state of affairs that young Afro-Guyanese faced.
Yeah.
It is upsetting. It was a terrifying state. It was only left for mothers to keep their sons at home. They don't go on the road.
Yeah.
The young boy Shaquille from Agricola, the police shot him and said he looked suspicious.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is the reason why he was shot. He
Mhm.
went out of his house looking suspicious that
Suspicious.
morning. And that's a question I kept asking, what is this suspicious look?
How do I not?
How do I
suspicious?
not look suspicious?
And in keeping with that, there was actually a modus operandi of the Guyana police force on the Barra Jagdeo, of which, if there is more than 3 Afro-Guyanese in a vehicle,
Yes.
you created what they dubbed a suspicious
Suspicious
moving
movement.
vehicle.
Correct.
And at that time, the police had every right to stop, search, or detain. As well in the communities, they had what they dubbed a modus operandi of the police force on the Jagdeo, that they are waiting to commit a crime.
You know,
That was
You
another
know something,
offense.
Malika, if
Go
I
ahead,
may
Thandi, go
interject
ahead.
here. We need to be careful and not to create the impression that the Jagdeo era, PPPC era youth is a youth that is bereft of understanding or
okay.
unaware of the crisis Guyana faced during those 23 abhorrent years.
Yeah.
Abhorrent years. Guyana is safer.
Oh, yes.
Security has improved. Yes, there is room for improvement. Security has improved in this country. We feel safer and more protected by our policemen and women.
That's right.
They're no longer viewed as the enemy. And the opposition can speak without
Freely.
fear of
Exactly.
victimization.
Yes.
Yes.
I tell people all the time, my name is Thandi McAllister. The McAllisters, we lived the victimization of the PPPC government.
It is hair raising to
So-
listen to you.
It is our responsibility to remind the young people of the journey and of how much this government, the David Granger-led administration, has improved Guyana within a short period
Very
of 3 years.
Vanessa Kissoon challenged Mr. Jagdeo to a debate prior to the passage of the motion in the betrayal motion in the National Assembly, because I would like for the People's Progressive Party civic supporters, the acolytes, to challenge any member of this administration. Let us have a serious discussion. Let us have a debate. Common face in the nation. All you're right over there listening to this program.
Yeah.
Send somebody
Yes,
that is
across
informed.
the road.
Yeah.
Let them walk over. It's 3 minutes. The operator will allow them to come in. And let us have a discourse. Let them challenge us to a serious discourse as to what the PPPC has done and juxtapose that to the developmental program that has come under this administration in every sector.
And let us say this, Ryan, let us say this, that development under this administration has not been discriminatory.
That's right. That's right.
We have had
Mercy.
and we continue to have
That's right.
equitable distribution
Left,
of
right, and center.
resources.
Yes.
And you know what? With consistency.
Yes.
And that is what hurts and drives fear into the hearts of the PPPC and Jagdeo.
Yeah.
Without the onset of oil, let's just, forget that is what is happening, that is what is coming. Do you believe that we would have seen the same sort of, if you want to call it, vigor from the PPP, the same sort of clamoring, we must get power by any means necessary? And I mean, yes, certain things in a country, it's your democratic right. But on this note, I must also mention those little political parties we see just jumping up. Do you believe that without the onset of oil, minus that, we would have seen this sort of what is basically a crazy rush to grab power? Would that exist without oil?
From the
Believe so?
PPPC, I believe so. Because
Or
I believe
is
that
it Jagdeo's PPPC?
Jagdeo's PPPC,
Okay.
which believes that it has a right
Yeah.
to Guyana.
Or
Somebody
right.
bequeathed
Yes.
Guyana to it. And I remember, I don't,